The marketplace was loud, filled with shouting voices and cruel laughter. But in the center stage stood silence, a silence made of fear. A young alien woman stood with her hands tied above her head, her back bare and covered with old bruises. She was shaking, but not from the cold. She knew what was about to come. The merchant raised his whip high into the air and the crowd cheered, shouting the words that had become a game to them. $1, one whip. The chant spread like fire. Coins clinked into the wooden box at the merchant's feet. Each coin meant another strike. Each strike meant more pain. The alien woman closed her eyes, waiting for the first blow. The sound of leather cutting through the air came, followed by a sharp crack as it tore against her skin. She gasped, biting her lip to hold back the scream. The crowd laughed harder, clapping as if this was a play staged for their amusement. $1, one whip, they shouted again, louder this time. Children in the crowd laughed too, not knowing the weight of what they were cheering for. Some people pushed forward with coins, eager to see her broken. To them, she was not a person. She was nothing but a show. Her knees buckled from the second strike. She wanted to fall, but the chains held her up. The merchant smiled proudly, showing her pain as if it was his prize. And yet, in the middle of the cruel laughter, there was one man who did not cheer. He stood near the back, a human with broad shoulders and tired eyes. His hands were rough, the hands of someone who worked hard. But his eyes were not like the rest of the crowd. His eyes carried anger. He had seen many things in his life. He had seen hunger, war, and loss. But this was something that burned his heart in a way nothing else had. The sound of the whip, the sight of her trembling body. It was not just wrong. It was evil. The whip came down again, and this time she cried out. It was not loud, but the sound pierced through him. The human's jaw clenched. The crowd's laughter felt like poison in his ears. Every cheer, every shout of one more, twisted inside him until he could not stay still any longer. He stepped forward. The crowd barely noticed him at first. People only cared about the coins in their hands and the cruel sport in front of them. But the merchant noticed. The man's boots were heavy against the wooden floor of the stage. He walked with slow, steady steps until he stood close enough that the merchant frowned. "Do you want to play too, human?" the merchant asked, smirking. $1, one whip. Pay, and you can join the fun. The human reached into his pocket. The crowd leaned forward, expecting another cruel player. He pulled out a single coin, rough and scratched, and placed it down in the box. The merchant grinned wide, lifting the whip again. The alien woman flinched, waiting for another strike. But the whip did not come. The human's hand reached out and grabbed the merchant's wrist. The crowd gasped. The merchant froze, eyes wide. For a moment, the entire marketplace fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. $1, the human said, his voice low but steady. To stop the whipping. The words cut through, the silence like a blade. Murmurs rose among the people. Some laughed nervously, some shouted angrily, and others stared, confused. The merchant tried to pull his hand free, but the human's grip was like iron. "This is no place for kindness," the merchant spat. "She is nothing. She is here for the crowd, not for you." But the human did not move. His eyes locked on the alien woman who was staring at him with wide, trembling eyes. She did not understand. Why would a stranger risk himself for her? Why would anyone stop when it was easier to walk away? The merchant growled, pulling harder, and the whip slipped from his hand. The human picked it up and threw it to the ground. The sound echoed like thunder in the quiet. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some shouted in anger, calling him mad. Others whispered, wondering who he was. But the human did not care. He had seen enough. The alien woman's chest rose and fell, fast, her body weak, her spirit almost gone. Yet in that moment she felt something strange, a spark she had forgotten long ago. Hope. The merchant's face twisted with rage. "You think you can stop this game? You think you can defy the crowd?" he shouted. "You will regret this, human." The crowd roared with fury. Coins were thrown, not for more whipping now, but for blood. Guards began to move, pushing through the people, their weapons ready. The human did not back away. His voice rang out again, louder this time, shaking the silence. This ends now. The alien woman's heart pounded. For the first time in years, someone had stood up for her. But she also knew. The whip was only the beginning. What came next would decide both their fates. The crowd erupted into chaos, voices rising in anger and disbelief. They had come for a show, for the cruel entertainment of seeing the alien woman whipped until she broke. But now one human had stepped into the middle, breaking the rules of the game. The whip lay on the ground like a dead snake, its cruel power silenced by the stranger's hand. The guards pushed forward, their boots heavy against the wooden stage. They carried clubs and sharp blades, ready to teach the human what happened, to anyone who dared disturb the crowd's fun. The merchant spat on the ground, glaring at the human. "You paid your $1, he sneered. "But you will pay more than that now. You think you can stand against all of us?" The human's jaw tightened. He did not answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket again. The crowd fell into uneasy silence as he pulled out another coin. He dropped it into the box with a sharp clink. $1, he said slowly, his voice clear and calm. $1. To end this auction. Gasps filled the air. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others shouted angrily, demanding the show continue. "No one stops the auction," a guard barked. But the alien woman, still chained to the post, stared at him with wide eyes. Her lips trembled. She could not understand it. Why was this man wasting his money and his safety for her? She had been nothing but a tool of pain for these people, a nameless body to hurt. And yet, he had spoken for her. The merchant barked an order. 2 guards rushed at the human, their blades flashing in the sunlight. The crowd cheered again, but this time not for the woman's pain, for blood, for violence. The human moved like water, stepping aside. The first guard's swing cut only air. The human's fist slammed into his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground with a crash. Gasps broke out again. The second guard roared and slashed, but the human grabbed his wrist, twisted and sent, the blade clattering to the ground. With one push, he sent the guard stumbling back into the crowd. The audience did not laugh this time. They stared, stunned. The stranger was not just bold, he was dangerous. The merchant's face grew red with fury. "Seize him!" he shouted. "Seize him now!" More guards stepped forward, 6 this time, their faces hard, their weapons ready. The alien woman felt her chest tighten. She wanted to scream for him to run, to escape before it was too late. But her voice caught in her throat. She had no right to ask him to stay, and yet her heart wanted him to. The human stood tall. His breathing was steady. He raised his voice again, not to the guards, not to the merchant, but to the crowd. "Look at yourselves," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "You cheer for pain. You cheer for cruelty. What does it make you? Better? Stronger? No, it makes you empty." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some booed, some cursed at him, but others looked away in shame. His words carried weight, heavier than the coins in the box. The merchant snarled, "Enough of this! Kill him!" The guards rushed forward, and the stage became a storm of motion. The human fought with every ounce of strength. His fists met steel. His arms blocked heavy blows. Pain shot through him as a club struck his side, but he did not fall. He grabbed one guard by the collar and threw him into another, sending both crashing down. He ducked a blade and kicked hard, knocking the weapon from another's grip. The alien woman watched in shock. Every strike he took was for her, every drop of sweat, every bruise. None of it was for his own pride. It was for her freedom. She had never seen such madness. She had never seen such courage. Finally, the guard stepped back, groaning and broken. The merchant was pale now, his anger slipping into fear. The human wiped blood from his lip and pointed to the chains holding the woman. "She is not yours," he said firmly. "Not anymore." The merchant opened his mouth to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. The crowd was watching, not cheering anymore, but waiting. Something had changed. The air was heavy, charged with something new. The human turned to the alien woman. Their eyes met. She saw pain in his, but also fire, a fire that burned against all odds. For the first time she whispered a word, her voice weak but clear. Why? The human looked at her and spoke simply. Because someone has to. Her heart clenched. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever cared enough to fight. She had been whipped, broken, humiliated. And yet in this moment a stranger had given her something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The merchant screamed in rage. He grabbed the whip from the ground and swung it wildly at the human. The leather snapped through the air, but the human caught it mid-strike, his hand gripping it tight. He pulled hard, yanking the weapon out of the merchant's hand. The crowd gasped again as the whip fell at his feet. He placed his boot on it, pinning it down. "No more," he said. The alien woman's chest heaved. Tears filled her eyes, not of pain this time, but of something deeper. The human reached for her chains. They rattled loudly, still strong, still unbroken. But she knew now, sooner or later those chains would fall, and when they did, she would never forget the first step, the step of the man who dared to stand where no one else would. The whip lay crushed under the human's boot. Its cruel power ended in one step. But the silence that followed did not last long. The crowd exploded into shouts and curses, their thirst for blood now stronger than ever. The merchant's face twisted with rage, his pride wounded more deeply than any strike. "Take him down," the merchant roared. The guards moved in, more than before, 10 of them now, their blades shining in the sun. The wooden stage creaked under their boots as they surrounded the human. The alien woman's heart raced. Her chains rattled as she struggled against them, helpless, forced to watch. The human stood tall. His shoulders were square, his jaw set. He was outnumbered, but his eyes did not flinch. He looked like a mountain standing against the storm. The first guard lunged forward, swinging a club at his head. The human ducked, the wind of the blow passing over him. His fist shot out, cracking against the guard's jaw. The man stumbled, falling to his knees. Another guard slashed with his blade, but the human caught his arm and twisted hard. The guard screamed, dropping the weapon. With a swift kick, the human sent him crashing into 2 others, knocking them off balance. The crowd roared in shock. They had expected an easy kill, but this stranger fought like no ordinary man. Every movement was sharp, precise. He did not waste a single strike. But the guards were many, and they pressed harder. One swung from behind, the blade cutting across the human's back. He winced, pain flashing in his eyes, but he did not fall. He spun, elbowing the attacker in the face, then grabbed his collar and slammed him to the ground. Blood dripped from the human's lip. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He was hurt but still standing. The alien woman could barely breathe as she watched. Each moment felt endless, each strike louder than the last. She had never seen anyone fight for her. She had never seen anyone risk his life for her freedom. The merchant's face grew pale with fear, though his mouth spat anger. "Kill him! Don't stop until he's dead!" The guards obeyed, attacking all at once. Clubs, blades, and fists came from every side. The human moved like lightning, blocking, striking, dodging. He took blows, his body shaking with pain, but he gave back more than he received. One guard fell, then another. Soon, half of them lay groaning on the ground, unable to rise. The crowd no longer cheered. They stared in awe, whispering among themselves. Some began to question what they were seeing. Who was this man? Why was he doing this? Finally, the last 2 guards came together, charging at the same time. The human braced himself. One swung low, the other high. He ducked under the first strike, grabbed the second guard by the arm and pulled him forward. Their bodies crashed into each other with a heavy thud. Both fell to the stage, groaning. Silence fell again. The human stood alone, his chest heaving, blood dripping down his arm. The guards lay beaten at his feet. The alien woman stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. He turned his head toward her, their eyes meeting. His expression was tired but steady. He had not fought for glory. He had fought for her. The merchant trembled now. His whip was gone, his guards broken, but his pride refused to yield. He grabbed a dagger from his belt and stepped forward, his voice shaking with fury. "You will pay for this, human," he hissed. The human did not move, his eyes locked on the merchant, waiting. The crowd leaned in, holding their breath. The merchant lunged with the dagger. The blade flashed in the light, aiming for the human's chest, but in one swift motion, the human stepped aside, grabbed the merchant's wrist, and twisted. The dagger clattered to the ground. The merchant screamed, falling to his knees. The human placed his foot on the dagger just as he had done with the whip. His voice rang out, strong and steady. "No more." The crowd gasped. Some shouted angrily. Others whispered in fear. The merchant groaned on the ground, clutching his arm. His power was gone. The alien woman's chest heaved as tears filled her eyes. The man who stood before her was bleeding, broken, yet unshaken. For the first time in years, she felt a spark. Inside her, something she thought had been killed long ago. The human stepped closer to her chains. His hand reached out, brushing the cold metal. He looked at her again, his voice soft this time. "You are not theirs," he said. "Not anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. She only stared at him, her heart trembling. Behind them, the crowd shifted uneasily. The whispers grew louder, turning into murmurs of doubt. Some people began to leave, no longer entertained. Others glared with hate, angry that their cruel game had been broken. The merchant groaned, crawling backward, his face twisted with fear. His voice cracked as he shouted to the crowd. "Don't just stand there, stop him, stop them both." But his words carried no power now. The guards were beaten, the whip was broken, and the crowd was no longer sure of their own strength. The human's hand stayed on the chains, his eyes never leaving hers. She could not move, could not speak, but inside something new had been born. Not just hope, something stronger. Trust. The clash had ended, but she knew this was only the beginning. The stage was broken, the guards defeated, and the whip lay silent, on the ground. But the human knew it was not over. The merchant might be on his knees, but the crowd was still restless. Their eyes burned with anger, confusion, and fear. Some shouted for revenge, others demanded blood. The tension was like a storm ready to explode. The alien woman's chains rattled as she pulled weakly, her wrists raw and bleeding. She looked at the human with trembling eyes. For a moment she believed he might free her. For a moment she dared to hope. The human's hand gripped the cold iron. He tugged, testing the chains. They were thick, built to hold strong bodies. He could not break them with bare hands. His eyes scanned the stage and landed on the fallen dagger. In one swift move, he grabbed it and wedged the blade against the lock. Metal screeched as he forced it, sparks flying. The lock gave way with a sharp snap. The alien woman gasped as the chains fell free. Her arms dropped heavily, her body trembling, with sudden freedom. She nearly collapsed, but the human caught her, holding her steady. His grip was firm yet gentle, the first touch of kindness she had felt in years. "We must go," he whispered. The crowd roared in fury as they realized what he had done. The merchant screeched like a wounded animal. "Stop them! Don't let them leave alive." Dozens of men surged forward, pushing past the broken guards. Stones and bottles flew through the air, smashing against the stage. The human pulled the alien woman close, shielding her with his body. He leapt down from the stage, his boots hitting the ground hard, and began to push through the mass of people. The marketplace erupted into chaos. The air was filled with screams, curses, and the sound of footsteps pounding on the wooden boards. Merchants knocked over their stalls to block the path. Angry faces, twisted in rage, surrounded them. The human's arms stayed locked around the alien woman as he forced his way forward, his shoulders striking aside anyone who tried to stop him. A stone struck his back. He winced, but did not slow. A bottle shattered against his arm, cutting the skin. Blood trickled down, but his grip did not loosen. The alien woman pressed her face against his chest, her body weak, her heart pounding. She could hear his heartbeat. Steady, strong, unshaken. They pushed through a narrow alley between two buildings. The shadows closed around them, but footsteps thundered behind. The mob was chasing, their voices echoing off the walls. "This way," the human said, his breath heavy but calm. The alley twisted, leading them deeper into the city's dark veins. Trash and broken crates littered the ground. Rats scattered as they ran. The alien woman stumbled, her legs too weak after so much pain. Each step felt like fire. She fell, but before her body hit the ground, the human lifted her into his arms. Her eyes widened in shock. No one had ever carried her like this. Not with gentleness, not with care. She wanted to speak, to tell him to leave her behind, but the words died in her throat. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his arms strong despite the blood dripping from his wounds. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. The mob was gaining. Torches lit up the alley, their flames painting the walls with red light. The human turned sharply, kicking open a wooden door. They slipped inside a dark, abandoned building. Dust filled the air, the smell of rot heavy. The human set her down gently against the wall. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. The mob stormed past outside, their voices echoing as they searched. "Find them! They cannot escape!" The alien woman's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes stayed on the human as he stood near the doorway, ready to fight if they were discovered. His silhouette was tall, steady, like a wall between her and the world. Minutes passed. The mob's voices grew distant, their footsteps fading. Silence returned. The human finally turned back to her, kneeling at her side. "You're safe," he whispered. "Safe." The word felt strange to her. She had not heard it in years. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. Why do this?" He looked at her, with tired eyes. "Because you deserve more than chains." Her throat tightened. She wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. Her spirit was still too scarred, too afraid to believe. And yet, something inside her shifted. The human tore a strip from his own shirt and wrapped it around her wrists, covering the bleeding marks from the chains. His hands were rough, but his touch was careful. She stared at him, searching for lies, but found none. For the first time, she felt the faintest warmth in her chest. A fragile spark. Hope. The silence did not last long. A sharp crash came from outside, the sound of wood breaking. Voices shouted again. The mob had returned. The human's eyes hardened. He helped her to her feet, his arms steady around her. "We must keep moving," he said. She nodded weakly, her body leaning into his. Together, they slipped out through the back of the building into the night's shadows. The city behind them roared with anger, but in the darkness, one truth burned brighter than the torches of the mob. They were no longer captor and prisoner. They were something else now, two souls bound by one desperate escape. And though the night was dangerous, the alien woman knew she would never forget this moment. The moment hope began to feel real again. The night was cold, the city alive with angry voices searching for them. Torches lit the streets like rivers of fire, and the sound of boots echoed against the stone. The human kept moving, carrying the alien woman through dark alleys and narrow paths only locals would know. His breath was heavy. His wounds stung with every step, but his arms never let her fall. At last they reached the edge of the city. Beyond the last row of crumbling buildings stood an abandoned mill, half swallowed by weeds and shadows. Its roof sagged, its walls cracked, but for now it was a place to hide. The human pushed the rusted door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and damp wood. Moonlight poured through holes in the roof, painting silver lines across the floor. Broken barrels and rotted sacks lay scattered, long forgotten by the world. He set her down gently against the wall, then crouched beside her. His chest rose and fell with exhaustion. Blood stained his shirt, dripping from cuts he had no time to tend. The alien woman's body trembled. She was free of the chains, yet still bound by fear. Her wrists burned where the iron had rubbed her, raw. Her legs barely held her weight. She looked at him, confusion swimming in her eyes. "Why? Do you keep me? She whispered, her voice hoarse. You could run. Leave me. Live. The human met her gaze, his eyes steady despite the pain in them. Because you are not a thing to leave behind. You are someone. You deserve more. Her lips parted, but no words came. She had been called many things in her life, slave, beast, toy, but never someone. The human tore another strip from his shirt and began wrapping her wrists again, tighter this time to stop the bleeding. His hands were rough, scarred by years of labor, yet his touch was careful. She flinched at first, not used to kindness, but slowly she let him. You fight like you are not afraid, she said quietly, almost accusing. I am afraid, he answered, tying the cloth. But fear doesn't mean you stop, it means you keep moving, no matter what. The words sank into her chest like fire. She turned her head, staring at the broken roof above. She wanted to believe him, but her world had always been chains and pain. Hope was dangerous. It hurt when it was taken away. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of his breathing. Finally, she spoke again. My name is Sira. The human paused, meeting her eyes. She hadn't spoken her name in years, not since it was beaten out of her. Saying it now felt like stepping out of the dark. He nodded. Sira, he repeated softly, as if memorizing it. I'm Daniel. The name felt strong, steady, like the man himself. She whispered it back. Daniel. For a moment, the broken mill no longer felt so cold, but outside, danger was still near. The mob had not given up. Voices echoed faintly through the night. Sira stiffened, fear returning. Daniel stood and moved to the door, peering through a crack. Shadows of men carrying torches moved along the far street, searching every corner. They will find us, she whispered, clutching her knees. Not tonight, Daniel said firmly. We'll rest here, then we keep moving. Sira looked at him, her eyes wide. She wanted to ask why he risked everything for her, but she already knew the answer, because he could not walk away. Still, she struggled to understand it. You don't know me, she said. Daniel turned back to her, his expression calm but hard. I don't need to know you to see what they've done. That's enough. Her throat tightened. The words felt heavy, pressing against her chest. She lowered her gaze, whispering, I thought no one would ever stop them. Daniel crouched again, his voice steady. Then remember this night. Remember that someone did. The tears finally came, hot and unstoppable. She tried to hide her face, ashamed, but Daniel did not look away. He let her cry, her body shaking with years of pain that had never been allowed to escape. When the sobs faded, she was exhausted. Her head rested against the wall, her breathing soft. Daniel stayed beside her, guarding the door, his hand resting on a piece of broken wood like a weapon. His eyes stayed sharp, scanning the shadows. Sira watched him through half-closed eyes. His body was bruised, his clothes torn, yet he did not falter. He looked like a wall that nothing could break. In that moment, something changed inside her. For years, she had believed she was alone, that her suffering was endless. But now, with this stranger by her side, she felt the smallest seed of something new. Not just hope. Not just survival. The beginning of trust. The night stretched on, heavy with silence and danger. But inside the broken mill, two souls sat close. One guarding, one healing. And though the world outside burned with hatred, inside, something fragile had begun to grow. The night dragged on slowly inside the broken mill. Daniel sat at the doorway, eyes sharp, listening to every sound outside. Sira leaned against the wall, her body weak, but her mind restless. She had never known safety, and even now she did not feel it. Every distant shout reminded her of the chains. Every torchlight flickering through the cracks in the wood reminded her of the whip. But something inside her was different. She had seen Daniel fight. She had seen him stand when no one else dared. And the image of him tearing the whip from the merchant's hand would not leave her mind. For the first time, she wanted to believe she was more than a victim. Her hands, though, raw and scarred, curled into fists. Daniel glanced at her. He saw the fire beginning in her eyes. He said nothing, only nodded once as if telling her silently that the fight was not his alone anymore. Hours passed before the sound came, the heavy stomp of boots, the clatter of weapons. The mob had returned, more organized, louder. Sira stiffened, fear pressing against her chest. Daniel rose to his feet, his shoulders tense. "They found us," he whispered. The door rattled as fists pounded against it. Voices shouted orders. The wooden frame shivered under the force. Sira's heart raced. She wanted to hide, to curl into the shadows, but her eyes caught Daniel's stance. He was ready to fight again, even though his body was already torn and bruised. She could not let him stand alone. Her gaze swept the room, landing on a broken piece of metal pipe lying among the dust. She crawled toward it, her arms trembling as she picked it up. It was heavy, awkward in her grip, but she held it tight. Daniel looked back at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Sira." She cut him off with a shake of her head. "No more. Chains," she said, her voice trembling but strong. The door finally gave way, crashing inward. Torches lit the mill, shadows dancing across the walls. A dozen men stormed inside, their blades ready, their eyes wild with anger. Daniel moved first, swinging the wooden plank in his hand. It cracked against the first attacker, sending him stumbling back. Another rushed forward, but Sira raised the metal pipe with both hands and swung. The blow was clumsy, desperate, but it connected. The man cried out, falling to his knees. Sira's chest heaved. Her arms shook from the effort. But she had done it. She had struck back. The mob hesitated, startled by the alien woman fighting beside the human. This was not the broken creature they had paid to see whipped. This was someone who dared to resist. Daniel fought like a storm, his strikes fast and unyielding. He moved to shield Sira, but she no longer stayed behind him. Each time an enemy came close, she swung her pipe, her fear burning into anger. "Get them!" The merchant's voice shrieked from outside. "Do not let them escape again." More men poured in, the fight turning into chaos. Daniel's body ached with every strike. His vision blurred, but he pushed through the pain. Sira stumbled, her legs weak, but each time she nearly fell, she forced herself back up. The crowd of attackers began to falter. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they faced a human who fought like fire and an alien woman who refused to break again. At one moment, a guard lunged at Daniel with a blade aimed at his chest. Daniel twisted, but too late. The blade cut across his arm. Blood spilled, and he staggered. Sira screamed, fury exploding inside her. She swung the pipe with all her strength, striking the guard across the head. The man crumpled to the ground. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her arms aching. But she stood tall. Daniel looked at her, pain in his eyes but pride as well. "Good," he said through clenched teeth. "Don't stop." The mob began to retreat, dragging their injured back. Their courage wavered. No one wanted to be the next to fall. Torches dropped to the ground as men fled into the night. Silence fell inside the mill once more. The floor was littered with groaning men, broken weapons, and scattered firelight. Sira's chest rose and fell violently. The pipe slipped from her hands, clattering to the ground. She stared at Daniel, her eyes wide. "I fought," she whispered, almost not believing her own words. Daniel, his body bloodied and tired, managed a small smile. "Yes, you did." She sank to her knees, tears spilling down her cheeks, but this time, they were not only from fear, they were from something deeper, stronger. For the first time in her life, she had chosen to fight. For the first time, she had stood beside someone, not as a slave, not as a victim, but as a fighter. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "But you are free now, Sira. Truly free." Her heart trembled. The chains may have fallen hours ago, but only now did she feel them gone. The turning point had come. Not when Daniel stepped onto the stage. Not when the whip was silenced, but here, in the broken mill, when she picked up the pipe and struck back at the world that had crushed her. The night was still dangerous. The merchant was still alive. The city was still hunting them. But Sira knew deep inside that she would never again face the darkness alone. And in the shadows of the ruined mill, hope no longer felt fragile. It felt unbreakable. The broken mill smelled of blood and smoke. Bodies of defeated guards lay groaning on the floor. Sira leaned against the wall, her chest rising and falling in heavy breaths, while Daniel stood tall, blood dripping from his arm but his eyes sharp. For a moment, silence filled the place, as if the storm had finally ended. But outside, a new sound echoed, a slow clap, mocking and cruel. The merchant stepped through the broken doorway, torchlight dancing on his twisted face. His fine clothes were torn, his hair matted with sweat, but his pride burned hotter than ever. In his hand he held a whip, longer and sharper than the one Daniel had crushed. Its tip glimmered with iron hooks, designed not just to hurt, but to tear flesh. The crowd followed behind him, fewer than before but louder, hungry for revenge. Their eyes burned with hate, yet beneath it was fear. They had seen what Daniel and Sira could do. The merchant's voice cut through the air. $1, one whip, he sneered. But this time, human, the whip is for you. Sira's heart clenched. She stepped forward, shaky but determined, her fists tight. Daniel raised an arm to stop her. His eyes stayed locked on the merchant. The merchant cracked the whip against the ground, the sound echoing like thunder. You think you've won? He spat. No, tonight ends with your blood. Daniel's jaw tightened. His body ached, his wounds burned, but he took a step forward, placing himself between Sira and the merchant. No more, he said, his voice steady. The merchant roared and swung the whip. It cut through the air, striking Daniel's shoulder. Flesh split, blood sprayed. Daniel staggered but did not fall. The crowd gasped, waiting for him to collapse. But he didn't. He straightened, his eyes blazing with fire. Sira cried out. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She grabbed the fallen metal pipe from the ground and stepped beside Daniel. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with the same fire. The merchant laughed, cracking the whip again. This time it lashed across Sira's arm. She cried out in pain but did not drop the pipe. She raised it high, ready to swing. Daniel looked at her, pride shining even through the pain. Together, he whispered. The whip came again, sharp and fast. Daniel caught it mid-strike, his hand gripping the leather tight. The hooks tore into his palm, blood dripping down, but he held firm. The merchant's eyes widened in shock as Daniel pulled hard, dragging him forward. Sira swung the pipe, with all her strength. It slammed into the merchant's side, sending him crashing to the ground. The whip slipped from his hand, writhing like a dead snake across the floor. The crowd gasped in horror. Their master, their cruel entertainer, was on the ground. Daniel picked up the whip. For a moment the crowd froze, silence heavy in the air. The weapon that had humiliated so many, that had broken bodies and spirits, was now in the hands of the man who had stopped the game. The merchant crawled backward, his face pale with fear. No, you wouldn't, he stammered. Daniel raised the whip high. The crowd waited, breathless, expecting revenge, expecting blood. But Daniel's hand stopped. He looked at the whip, then at Sira. Slowly, with steady movements, he tore it apart, ripping the cruel leather and iron hooks until nothing but scraps remained. He dropped the pieces to the floor, his voice ringing out clear. This ends here. Forever. The crowd murmured, shaken. Some turned and fled. Others lowered their torches, their hatred dissolving into fear. The symbol of their cruelty was gone. The merchant screamed, his pride shattered. He lunged forward in one last desperate attempt, a hidden knife flashing in his hand. But before he could strike, Sira stepped forward. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "No more chains," she said, and with the metal pipe, she struck him down. The merchant collapsed, the knife clattering to the ground. His eyes stared, wide in shock before closing forever. Silence filled the mill again, heavy but different this time. The crowd backed away, no longer bold, no longer cheering. One by one they melted into the night, leaving only whispers behind. Sierra dropped the pipe, her arms trembling. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not of fear this time, but of release. She turned to Daniel. He stood bloodied, his chest rising and falling, but his eyes met hers with a quiet strength. "You are free now," he said softly. Her knees gave out, but Daniel caught her before she fell. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing freely, her body shaking with years of pain finally breaking loose. For the first time she felt the truth in his words. She was free, not just from chains, not just from the whip, but from the belief that she was nothing. Daniel held her close, his own eyes closing as the weight of the night finally lifted. $1, one whip. The mob had once shouted, but now in the ruins of cruelty, the last whip had been broken, not with coin or laughter, but with courage and defiance. And though the night was still dark, Sierra knew a new dawn would come. A dawn where she was no longer a victim. A dawn where one human's choice had changed her fate forever.